Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffiths. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome. My guest today on Your Partner in Success Radio, Hunter Hastings, is an accomplished economist, entrepreneur, and author with a rich background in corporate marketing and executive leadership. He has held key positions such as Chief Marketing Officer in a global consumer products company, CEO of a Silicon Valley startup, and senior partner in a consulting firm advising Fortune 500 clients on customer motivation and service strategy. An adjunct professor at Hult International Business School, he has authored 7 books, including his latest, Aberrant Capitalism, The Decay and Revival of Consumer Capitalism, which was published by Cambridge University Press. And that book is on my desk as we speak. A graduate of Cambridge University with a master's degree in economics, he is also a venture capitalist, and he has his own podcast called the Economics for Business Podcast. Y'all, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling. It's right after Christmas. I've had way too many things that I should not have eaten, and I'm suffering. So bear with me. And he advocates for entrepreneurship and customer-centric business practices. So Hunter, good morning. Welcome for being with me here today, and thank you for sending your book. It's in front of me as we speak.
Well, good morning, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
We were talking in the green room about how today is Friday. It's between Christmas and New Year's, and it's just an odd day. We've eaten more than we should have. We're looking at the refrigerator saying, what do I do now? But as you mentioned, it's a good time to get caught up on books that we haven't had the opportunity to read. And, once you said that, I calmed down. I went, okay, now I know what to do, because I've got one of those brains where it's just running like a squirrel, hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it. And I'm having a hard time shutting it down to take a break. I don't think I'm alone in that, though.
Yeah, take a break is not quite the approach I would take, but read in a different direction. Read things that you haven't read before and find things on YouTube that are new education for you. And as you said, Denise, that sends you down on another path and another branch, and eventually your brain is amused in a different way between Christmas and New Year.
I really do. So Hunter, before we get started, can you share a bit about yourself with our audience and how you like to show up in the world?
Well, I like to say that my academic track is economics. And it's a special kind of economics, which you mentioned in the intro. It's entrepreneurial economics, which is not the same as the PhDs in the government talk about, which is macroeconomics, the country level GDP and those kinds of aggregates. It's about people. It's about how people thrive. So economics is the study of human thriving. And that means it's about material well-being, but also non-material well-being, how people feel. And that kind of economics is underplayed in business school and in universities and on the news and in the newspapers and websites. And so that's a really interesting study, an alternative form of economics. And then my corporate track was marketing, which is really the same thing. It's in a commercial sense doing the same study of thriving. How do you help people improve their lives? And I started out life at Procter & Gamble, and the life we were trying to improve was mom in laundry and mom in cosmetics and mom in hygiene and mom with babies. And that's a really fascinating field. How does mom run that system? It's really hard. How does she balance? How can we improve things for her? How can we make it more convenient and better? So I love that kind of systems thinking about both the economy and the people in it, and then the commercial world and people in it. And then having done that, I was able to take that intellectual property and apply it in other directions, both in venture capital, because that's how venture capital succeeds, improving people's lives, and in teaching. And now that's what we're trying to do in the field of management.
That is a great story. And Hunter, you argue in the book that customer capitalism has been a powerful force for good. And listen, I agree with you. Can you explain to our audience how it has improved living standards and quality of life for billions over the centuries? This is not something new. And all of this despite the skepticism that we're starting to see from many young people today. They just listen, you go to Twitter, you go anywhere, and they're complaining bitterly. I can't move out of my mom's basement. I can't buy a house. I can barely buy groceries. Things are getting kind of icky out there.
Yeah, so one of the quotes in the book Aberrant Capitalism is that the capitalist system is an entrepreneurial system, not a managerial system. That's a bit academic, but drilling into it, entrepreneurship, why people go into business, why they start businesses, why they run businesses, is an outbound ethical activity. I'm trying to find customers. So customers are other people in the world. I'm trying, as I used the phrase before, to improve their lives. I'm trying to get them to purchase something from me that they decide is better for them. And therefore, I'm incented to do that for them, to make life more convenient, to make it more productive, to make it more comfortable, to make their food more tasty, to help them cook, as we're talking about, Denise. And that is the ethic of entrepreneurship. So capitalism is that ethic. It's the attempt to get people to a position of thriving more. And there's an incentive to do that. Every competitive firm has a rival is trying to do that better. And so the positive incentives in that economic system are to do better and better at improving people's lives. And that's exactly how it's played out over 250 years, however many years you count since the Industrial Revolution, Adam Smith and so on. And living standards, the quality of life, however we pronounce it, is getting better and better. There's a great book that depicts all of the improvement, good things getting better and bad things also improving over time, like literacy rates and child survival and education and the quality of food and the quality of healthcare. So capitalism is the system that produces that. It's always trying to be better at improving people's lives. And that's why we call it customer capitalism. The end user, the beneficiary, the recipient of all of that system output is a customer or a consumer, if you're thinking right at the end of the chain, but really just another person, your friend in the market, your companion, your fellow human being. We're trying to help.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you haven't thought about that before, I'm talking to the audience now, give that some thought because, there are a lot of things to be said about capitalism. Some of it's just viciously wrong, I think, and some of it's like, hey, that makes sense. But without it, what did we have before that? Trading? I mean, we didn't have much in the way of doing anything other than direct trading with our cavemen. So I'll take that, slice of bison over there and you can take this. I mean, capitalism had to evolve for the betterment of mankind, I believe.
Well, that's right, Denise. And you wouldn't want to live in a barter system like that because it's massively limited. And now with the system of global capitalism, we can exchange anything with anybody anywhere. And we do that with money, and we do that with the internet, and we do that with the kinds of exchange capabilities that we have now. We have tremendous choice, so we can consume what we choose to consume, and we can save, we can invest, and we can continue that evolution. And you use an important word, evolution, which is, there's a scientific concept called complex evolving systems. And it's kind of the same way that Darwin used evolution. we improve. We're always trying something new. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But the parts that work, we expand further, we emphasize, we continue to invest in them. So it's always evolving, always getting better. We may have occasional turnbacks in the market. We may have occasional economic downturns, but they're temporary. We look at them, we try to understand what caused them, and then we keep moving on. And so any kind of long-term graph of well-being, however you want to translate that, is always moving in a positive upwards direction. That's the joy of capitalism.
And in your book, you mention a peak, P-E-A-K, of customer capitalism. And I'm trying to think where it was in the book. I've got sticky notes all over it. But can you tell us more about this period in the late 19th century? What made it so significant?
Yeah, so the book traces a history. I'd call it a curve. So the late 19th century saw the application of the new technologies that were emerging, which were just as fantastic as the AI and the networks and the computing that we have today. But back then there were steam engines and railroads and so on. And what we call entrepreneurs, so imaginative, creative people who saw the opportunity, took those technologies and applied them to improve people's lives. So we look at, for example, Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Now, he's one of the so-called robber barons.
I just wrote that down. When you said, I was just writing that down.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the wrong way to look at that. So what happened was that he took the price of kerosene and drove it down and down and down through efficiencies, and that took light to people's homes. Prior to that, they had candles, which were a not very good way of giving light, and B, they're expensive. People couldn't afford candles. So out in the West and the South, where they couldn't afford candles, you went to bed and stopped working when it got dark. So think of you, Denise, with your brain running at all times, and you've got to stop when it gets dark. Well, that's a negative for thriving. And so getting light into people's homes extended the day. It made people more productive. They could work longer. They could read to their kids at night or whatever they did with their families. It improved lives. We look at Quaker Oats, which was the first mass-produced, mass-distributed, mass-marketed food. It was much more nutritious than people were used to. It was safer. It was packaged. It was affordable. And that the Quaker Oats Company were great marketers. They used sampling and couponing and a lot of things that we use today. So they were inventing these ways to improve lives. Railroad improved travel. Eventually, Edison produced the electric light that replaced the kerosene. So that's another example of improving. And all of this time, people's lives are just getting better and better. So we call that customer capitalism. The key word in that is entrepreneurship. So it's an ugly kind of a word. It's derived from the French, but it means these people with the ethic that if I help people improve their lives, to do better, to be more comfortable, then I'll get a market reward for that. And so the robber baron designation was applied by a inefficient competitor who didn't like the fact that Rockefeller was putting him out of business. But as far as customers were concerned, it was all good. Everything was efficient, low price, getting lower every week. It was clean, it was affordable. Everything was positive back then for the customer.
You can make life a little bit easier with your products, with your advice, with your books, however you are sharing information. That's important, because the truth is we don't know what we don't know. And it's one of the reasons I read so much. I want to know everything, everything. There's really not that many topics that are, just I'm not going to play around with them, but it is important to know that life is better. It's going to continue to get better. Yeah, if you're watching the news on the TV, which I advise that you don't, you're going to have a bad day. But if you're looking around, really looking around, go into your pantry. You mentioned the the Quaker oats. I don't care for them, but I do like, Bob's red oats or whatever they
Mhm.
are. Steel cut oats, there's a big difference between them. But go look at your pantry. I mean, life is so easy in your kitchen right now. And I cook. I cook everything. I love to cook. But most of what I really need is in my pantry. And I didn't make any of that. I just bought
Yep,
it.
that's right. Somebody else did it for you.
That's
You
exactly right.
you mentioned something really, really important, Denise, and that is knowledge. And so one of the ways economists think about this progress and think about entrepreneurs and helping people is creating new knowledge. So you can think of that as innovation. The entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial firms are always searching, always experimenting, always trying to find something new and better. And that's knowledge. It's new knowledge, a better explanation. So your Bob's red rice is new knowledge, or red oats, I should say, is better knowledge about oats. For some people, here's a better way to do it. It's not for everybody, maybe, but it's for some people. And so this flow of knowledge, this constant search for new knowledge is what is the underlying drive in this thriving and this improving of people's experiences. And so always looking for knowledge, always trying knowledge, and especially experiential knowledge, which comes from experiments. I'll try this. If it works, great, I'll do more of it. If it doesn't, I'll try something else. So discovery is a big part of the customer capitalism process.
And you said something, I was trying to find my notes, but we're always finding something new to go look at or understand. And you talked about marketing at the top of the show. This on Christmas Day, I had friends over, and a friend of mine brought over. She had gone to see Mannheim Steamroller, which I had heard of, hadn't really paid much attention, but what I did know about them, I liked. And it turns out, and we got into an hour-long conversation because it was so fascinating. But Mannheim Steamroller and C.W. McCall, if anybody has heard Convoy, they know
Mhm.
exactly who I'm talking about. They were marketers, both of these guys. Mannheim Steamroller, I think his name was Chip. I can't I can't remember his name now. And the guy who was not really named C.W. McCall, they were marketers for a bread company, I believe.
Mhm.
We went down the rabbit hole. I mean, iPads came out, iPhones came out, we were finding everything we could just because it was so fascinating. But
Yeah.
marketers to me, and I'm just going to, I don't know if I can express this very well, but marketing to me is such an important way for us to use as entrepreneurs, as humans, our God-given creativity.
So Peter Drucker, the famous management guru, said there are only two important things that corporations do. One is marketing and one is innovation. The rest is just cost. And what he meant by that was marketing is the way of understanding what people want. Innovation is giving it to them, bringing it to market. And marketing for me, Denise, is driven by the customer. So in my Procter & Gamble days, we're driven by mom. It's not us trying to think up things and sell them and push them to mom. It's mom experiencing her system, experiencing all the change that's going on around her, and identifying places where they can improve. And Steve Jobs said they can't think up the new product. That's not what they do. But the genius of the consumer is to always be dissatisfied. Economists call it unease. It's this brilliant insight that things could be better. So here I am washing my clothes in the laundry room. It could be better. The machine could be easier to load, or it could be faster, or it could use less electricity. The smell of the clothes could be better. They could fold themselves. They could maintain their
Now
color.
you're talking. They fold themselves. I would be so happy. I don't mind doing laundry. I hate folding them. Hate it. I don't know why.
Well, that's so there you go. You can't invent the laundry folder, and somebody will eventually. I know they're working on robots to do that right now. And it turns out to be a really, really, really hard thing to teach a robot, but we'll get there. But you just said it. I hate folding. That is an expression of need, to an expression of desire. So an alert entrepreneur listens to that and said, Denise hates folding laundry. Why is that? What's driving that unease? How could I make it better? What could I do? Maybe I can't invent a better folder, but maybe I can invent a fabric that doesn't wrinkle in the first place and doesn't need as much folding, or some other kind of solution. But I've got just this incredible insight, this tool, which is Denise hates laundry folding. That's a gem.
I really, really do. And you mentioned clothes that, yeah, and I've started moving more towards clothes. I threw out my iron a long time ago. I mean, who irons clothes anymore? But now I am using fabrics that are breathable, they're lightweight, and I can roll them. They take up a lot less room. I can shake them out and put them over my head, put this top over my head, and off I go. So somebody already did part of my work for me.
Yeah, so that's an interesting illustration of entrepreneurial innovation, Denise. If you look at a company like Lululemon, a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise, the founder was a textile technician. He invented fabrics. He invented, if you're a Lululemon fan, they call it wicking. It takes the sweat away and wicks it into the air, so the sweat isn't in the clothes. That you don't need to fold Lululemon clothes; they just hang. They're beautiful for that, and they're comfortable and they're soft and all of those kinds of things. Because people were saying, "Yeah, this T-shirt doesn't feel good to run in, or it doesn't feel good in the gym," and so a textile technician invented new fabrics that solved that problem. So this process, it's inherently fascinating to me, Denise, that me being uncomfortable in my T-shirt in the gym can launch $1 billion company of new textiles and new designs. That's the force that we're trying to unleash when we think about marketing.
You explained that so succinctly. I didn't make the connection. I just knew that some of the clothes that are in my drawers, I don't like them. I couldn't tell you why I don't like them. I just don't.
Yep.
But you're right. They're not that comfortable. When I pull them out, they're a little bit wrinkled, and I'm like, So I have to run to the dryer, put it on steam, throw it in there. By the time that happens, I'm irritated.
Yeah.
I really am. But if I can just grab a rolled up shirt, and I've got every color of black you can imagine, so that's easy for me to do. I just grab something, I shove it over my head, and off I go. And I'm all happy. It feels good on my skin. I didn't have to take 3 or 4 extra steps, and somebody thought of that and delivered it to me. And I thank them.
Well, exactly. So somewhere out there in the world of customer capitalism, somebody is thinking about that problem that you have, and they're going to solve it for you. And then their job is to let you know that it's been solved, it's available, you can have it. That's the other part of marketing, which is just getting the word out, creating the new knowledge.
Right.
Hey, you don't have to have that problem.
In your book, and I'm skipping around in your book, I do have sticky notes all over it. You describe a shift from entrepreneurs to managers in the 20th century. So my question is, how did this change impact business and their focus on customers, or did it?
Yeah, something bad happened, Denise, and that was management, or I sometimes in the book call it managerialism. And so these companies grew very, very big. So with Standard Oil and Quaker Oats, and we talk about Singer Sewing Machine and a lot of other big companies, they grew so big that the entrepreneurs couldn't put their hands around the whole thing. They became mass marketers, it became global. And so they had to find other people to do it. And those other people were managers. And management is the opposite of entrepreneurship. It's a logic of control. How can I control these companies and stop the variation? How can I control people so that they work the machines exactly the way that I want them to work, and they at the same speed and the same output? It's a logic of control, and it caught on in the early 20th century, as you say. And then in the First World War, they needed to control production at the national level. We want to make boats and armaments and not light and food. And so they controlled output at the national level. That became management. And then those people left the government and went into private enterprise. So they're constantly trying to exert this control. Second World War exacerbated it. The same thing happened. We had the war boards that hired people from business to run them, so we knew exactly how many airplanes and boats and uniforms to make. And then they went into business again, into IBM and GE and these big corporations, and then controlled them from the top with a process called strategic planning. And the logic was always to limit variation. Everything we just said about exploration, experimentation, trying to make things better became, how can we make things exactly the same every week? And so all of those processes, those control processes, were inherent in management. That starts to create rules. We'll do it this way. That starts to create a bureaucracy, which is how you enforce the rules. And this just grew and grew and grew over time. And then the final exacerbation of that was the financial markets, who want to control the financial outputs. They want the same level of earnings per share every quarter. And then it became every month for revenues. And then it became every week for website clicks. And then it became every day and every hour and every minute. We're trying to control things in shorter and shorter timeframes. So management became this restrictive, control, structured limitation. And at the macro level, it has hurt productivity. So we worry now about productivity being low despite all the technological advances. It happens at the growth level. We fear that growth is half or a third or a quarter of what it could be and should be. Management has caused all these problems. And then at the micro level, it hurts people's lives. So if you look at Gallup polls on engagement, how do you feel about your job? About 70% of people are disengaged. They don't like their job. And that's because of management. And so they're less productive, they're less happy. Everything we talked about in improving people's lives, management restricted it. Now, it's good for some people, it's good for the managers, and it's good for the financial markets because you can trade on the basis of that certainty. But overall, the control logic of management is the opposite of the creative approach of entrepreneurship and customer capitalism. So that's the history we try and trace in the book, Denise. There's a lot more detail than that, obviously, but that's the summary version.
When you were talking about that, I wrote down management does not equate to leadership. Those are two very different topics, aren't they?
Well, they are. And I have a difficult time with the word leadership, Denise, because it seems to require that some people follow. And that's just not right.
Gotcha.
I think the way to address that problem is through the topic that you raised, which is knowledge. At some certain times, in certain contexts, some people have more applicable knowledge than another. So say you're working on a team, you're in a corporation, you're on an innovation team. Some people have creative consumer knowledge, some people have technical knowledge, some people have process knowledge. Some people have supplier knowledge. Here's where I know I can get this supply. At any one point in time, you have the knowledge resting in one person. They become the leader for that moment. Everybody turns to them and says, we need your knowledge at this point. But that goes away because the circumstances change and now the market is in charge or the technician's in charge. That is a rotating, changing kind of environment. It's collaboration. And I just don't like the word leadership, but if we have it, let's have distributed leadership. Let's have everybody in a situation of leadership at the appropriate point in time. Leadership's a product of the business school, Denise. I think they developed it as a concept. They developed it as the great man or the great woman who leads the corporation to great heights. They sold that. They sell leadership seminars, they sell leadership books, they sell leadership courses. And I think it's a manufactured product of the management construct in this country. So I probably can't get rid of the word leadership, but let's think of it as everybody leads at the appropriate time with the appropriate knowledge.
More sense to me because listen, I consider myself to be a leader in some areas, not all. And the reason is because I don't know everything there is to know. I'm always looking for knowledge. I'm always looking for a better way to do things. I'm always looking for better advice or thoughts or concepts. Everybody leads if they're paying attention and if you're paying attention to them. So I agree with you. Leadership, it's a man-made construct, and I'm not sure that I've ever really agreed with it. Just as a for instance, we hear about all these CEO salaries, and I'm thinking, how in the heck do they justify some of that? I don't get it. I don't understand it. But I admit I don't know enough about it to really try to understand it.
Well, you know enough about it to see that there's a discrepancy there, that kind of discrepancy in the marketplace doesn't seem to be right. And then you start to investigate it, and you can relate it to what we talked about before, the demands of the financial markets for consistency and accuracy and precision, which isn't inherent in marketing and in business. One of the stories we tell in the book, Denise, is about Jack Welch at GE, who was one of those leaders who was heralded as great, and he was the manager of his era. One of the reasons for that was what they call earnings management. So they set up GE Capital as a division of GE. There was a lot of liquidity in GE Capital because of its insurance products and some other financial service products. And so if he needed to move money around in order to hit the earnings per share target of $1.26 on March 29th, he was always able to do that. And so he got that reputation of always delivering on his numbers exactly to the penny, exactly on the day, and that's managed earnings. And so, you know, that's not leadership. That's not improving people's lives, except maybe for a few traders in the financial markets. It's just financial manipulation. And so you get rewarded for that. You can get a big salary for that. And you can also buy back your own stock and reward yourself as a stockholder. But it's not the kind of creative improving people's lives that we look for in customer capitalism.
I've read about him and I know enough about him to be curious about him. But when you were talking, I wrote down the word manipulation. So I was hearing what you were saying as you were saying it. So I understand that. I wanted to ask you the peak of, and I may have to go over this again because it's important to me, but the peak of customer capitalism was the second half of the 19th century. And we talked about that, but I don't think we really went into the great entrepreneurs who built corporations that brought up, new tech, affordable illumination. We talked about that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
More nutrition, food, faster communication, household productivity devices like the sewing machine. I still have my grandmother's.
Yeah,
And let's not forget the miracle of the Sears Christmas catalog.
right.
That was a miracle.
It was, and it's, Sears catalog was the equivalent of Amazon today. It was just as advanced, just as unusual, just as unexpected, just as brilliant in, getting that catalog to people everywhere in America using the new postal service. Today it's FedEx and UPS, but just absolutely fabulous. And Richard Sears was one of those great entrepreneurs. He was a tinkerer, so he wrote the copy for his ads. He tested that, so he'd write different ads and test them on different people, use the one that worked the best. He found all kinds of different deals. His original business was watches, and he found out by tinkering that he could assemble a watch from parts that he bought cheaper than the watches that were on the marketplace from the great makers in Switzerland and elsewhere. And so that's how he started. He started selling watches, and that worked. And so he started selling other things. He's always testing, always looking, always trying. And then he built the warehouses and started the mass delivery system. He drove costs down all the time so that people could afford these new inventions. He got machines to farmers in all kinds of distant places that they could improve the productivity of the farm. He was just a brilliant, you'd call him a trader maybe today, but just an entrepreneur, always looking for the next solution, the next creative way of doing things. And then we talked about Rockefeller, who just drove costs down and down and down. Kerosene doesn't need to be $1.50 a gallon. I can get it down to a penny. And so that's what he did, always improving. And Carnegie making better and better steel so he could make better and better buildings and constructs and factories. And you mentioned the sewing machine. The Singer Company invented the sewing machine, and they built the biggest sewing machine factory in the world in New Jersey. And then they built another one in Scotland to serve Europe. So just always pushing, always trying. But all of that is variable. It's not predictable. It's not controllable. You can't have $1.26 earnings per share every quarter when you're thinking like that. And so those entrepreneurs are the energy, the driving force. They drive the market.
Ask you, Hunter, because I believe it was yesterday that I read somewhere that the final Sears store shut down.
Yeah,
And I may be wrong. It's horrible. How did that happen? I mean, I love Sears. I don't go shopping. If it doesn't come from a catalog or online and come to my door, I don't buy it literally. I bought my car online. I bought my house online. I don't like to shop. You're never going to see me in a mall. But when Sears started, kind of waning and disappearing, I got a little bit choked up. I like Sears. I like their products. And now they're gone. How did
Yeah.
that happen?
Well, you're right. It's sad in the sense that we don't like change, but it happened because, Denise, you don't like going shopping. It happened because there are people out there. Well, that's driving the market. The customer always drives it. And so you're uneasy with Sears. I remember going into Sears kind of late in the era, and the shops weren't quite well stocked, and the service wasn't as good as you get elsewhere. And then alternatives come up. So whether it's Nordstrom with better service, or whether it's Amazon with faster delivery and the ease of e-commerce, it's always moving. There are always entrepreneurs who are thinking of the next best thing. And Sears wasn't thinking of the next best thing. They were thinking of the last thing. They were thinking about, how can I preserve this? How can I make more money? How can I save costs? And when you're seeking to preserve, you're not innovating, you're not marketing, you're not thinking about how to improve on people's experiences. And so we have this concept of value we call the value experience. What you just described, I don't like shopping, is a value experience. Your experience when you go to a mall, it's not quite right. I wish I wasn't here. I wish it was an alternative. That's a value experience, in that case, negative. When you order on Amazon and your Nespresso coffee capsules arrive within 12 hours at your door, that's an experience, and it's a much better experience. I want more of that. And so we're always looking for better experiences. Only customers have experiences. They're the ones who drive the market. So this flow that we try to figure out, it flows from the customer's desire. That's what creates Standard Oil and Carnegie Steel and Singer Sewing Machine and Amazon. It's the customer who creates it. So it's also the customer who causes Sears to decline. I don't want it anymore. That's not good enough for me. I want better.
Sears was such a part of the American landscape for so long. But now it's gone.
Well, it's not gone because Sears was a formulation and encapsulation of customers saying, boy, I'd like to order from a great catalog of things. I would like this huge array of alternatives set out before me. I would like these prices to be lower. I treasure the information that is provided in Richard Sears' advertising copy. So the customers are always looking for that, and hey ho, they find it on Amazon today, and they found it on different places. So that hasn't changed. It's just the vehicle to get it to us that has changed.
Myself wondering, and of course he's no longer around. He hasn't been for a very long time, but I wonder what he would think of all this. I can't imagine he would be happy.
Who is that? I missed the first part.
You know, I would imagine that he would be heartbroken to see what's happened to his baby.
Well, he would, but actually, if it had started working less well, which it did from time to time when he was running it, he would have done something else. He would have started another company, he started lots of companies. He would have changed things. He would have figured out the catalog, the paper catalog isn't working, so let's find something else. He would have done something differently. He wouldn't have dragged a boat anchor around behind him that wasn't being effective. He would have done something else. He was an entrepreneur. He would never have stopped.
While you were talking, I remember that they sold houses, didn't they? At one time, Sears did.
Yeah, if you had moved out to Nebraska, the far west, and you wanted to erect a house on a piece of land that you had just bought or you just settled, then yes, you could buy a house. It arrived on a railroad, which had never been possible before, and it was delivered to the station, and you erected it like an erector set. But yes, he invented that. He pulled together all the parts. He wrote the instructions. Maybe he didn't write them personally, but he got them written, and he would deliver them. He delivered farm equipment, plows and tractors and those kinds of things. Whatever the customer needed. So if I'm a homesteader and I've just homesteaded an acre of land, I need a house. What's the fastest, best, cheapest, and most comfortable way to do that? I'll buy it from Sears. So it's always the customer who's driving that, but the genius of the entrepreneur is to answer the question, to solve the need, to creatively address that desire, that gap.
Houses still exist. You can find pictures of them on the internet. So looking at the 21st century, you seem to be very optimistic about a new entrepreneurial age, and I'm putting that in quotes, new entrepreneurial age.
Mm-hmm.
What changes are you seeing that support this view, particularly in terms of customer business relationships?
Yeah, so something massive has changed. It's a major shift, and that's the direct connection between the company and the consumer. So it's the internet, it's e-commerce, it's everything that modern technology enables through our iPhones and our iPads and our laptops. There's a direct connection. So this function that we've been talking about, that the customer has a desire, an unmet need, or just a feeling of unease, is directly transmitted to the producer. And so Amazon is a good example of that, but there are plenty more. They can track buying behavior. They can track price choices. They can track where you go on the web. They can analyze that. It's like they're talking to you directly. What do you want, Denise? What do you like? Why didn't you buy this? Why do you prefer green over black, or in your case, black over green? Why is that? How can I help you solve all of these choices that you have to make in a better and more creative way? It's a direct connection which didn't exist before. And so it creates these new business models they call network effects, that with this direct connection from the firm to the customer, the communication of desire is complete, precise, and direct, and we can respond to it faster as businesses. And you can cut out a lot of management with that and open yourself to the free flow of demand and match it with a free flow of supply, and just continue that engine of consumption and customer capitalism and accelerate it. So with AI now, we're making that analysis even faster. We're making it more precise. There's this direct connection. The customer is again in charge. And for a long time during the 20th century, we weren't. And so that's the big difference. I'm really excited about it. I think this concept of improving lives is just going to accelerate and become sharper and better and better.
And that led me to write down customer service and then customer experience, which are two different things. And we're talking about Amazon. I had a box delivered to my front porch last night. I have cats. I call them feline office assistants. And they sit here on my desk and they critique everything I do. But I opened it. I could see that the box was in bad shape, so I did not open it in the house. And I knew it was cans of cat food and some dry food, and I opened it up, and the first box on the top had been split open. Cans were missing. It was clear that cans were missing. And I immediately went to Amazon, explained what was going on, offered to send them pictures. And she said, okay, I see that you're missing 6 cans. We'll be happy to, give you a refund of $5.99. And I said, no, I'm asking for a full refund for the full box because I don't know that those cans aren't damaged or leaking, and
Mhm.
I'm not feeding them to my pets. 3 seconds later, she said, here you go. And I got a full refund.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't asked, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, that's a great story. I think we got customer service wrong for a long time, or business did.
Yep, yep.
Because we were defining it that way. We're defining solving their problems. I've done something wrong. I, the business, have done something wrong, and now I've got to solve that problem. That's customer service. But customer experience is initiated by the customer themselves. It's what they desire. And so we have what we call a value learning process in a model, Denise, where you originally had a need to fulfill. You've got cats and you need cat food. And so you're looking around, looking for offers. Is there anything in it for me? When you see that offer, yes, there is. So I'll check it out. I'll compare it. So the next part is relative value. I'm going to compare it with other offers. Then you decide to buy it. That's exchange value. I'll pay this amount of money for it. Then you have the experience. It's delivered, and it's delivered in a way that doesn't meet with your approval. So that's an experience, an experiential learning. You do something about it. You had that interchange. You then go into assessment. You're stepping back as you're describing now, and you say, well, was that good service or wasn't it? Will I go through the cycle again? Will I go to that same company again? And so the experience, again, is what drives the quality of the interaction with that company, not customer service in the sense of, hey, if Denise has a problem, I'll try and solve it for her over the phone. It's how do I get Denise to have the perfect experience so she'll keep coming back and again. It's a subtle difference, but it's the customer in charge. Only the customer has the experience. They set the terms. They decide what the standard is, and the standard can be made better and better by going through that value learning cycle.
And I suspect, and I'm sure they've tested this, that most people would have said, well, it's only 6 cans, here you go. No, it was a busted up box. I don't know if the rest of those cans were not going to poison my cat. I didn't care. It needed to be completely replaced or refunded. She didn't argue. And that was a good experience. She said, okay, well, I understand and we'll be happy to do this for you. And then I got an email that said $23 and some odd cents was being refunded to my card. I was all happy with that. But I will tell you, if she had just stuck with the $5.99, I wouldn't be buying from that particular company in Amazon again. I'd move, and I would have done it immediately.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant illustration, Denise, of how things are getting better. So under the realm of management, you would look at refunds for product damage, and you'd say that's a cost. And I want to get that cost down because I want to make more profit. So let's make as few refunds as we possibly can. So that would be the 6 cans if you called and no cans if you didn't call. And some people, as you say, won't. They'll just be fed up and cut off communication. But in the new world, the cost of the refund is not what is important. The joy of Denise is what's important, the experience of Denise. I want that customer forever because she's going to come back and buy more and more cat food in the future. So she is a revenue flow forever. I love my customer. I'm going to do whatever I can to help her have a better experience. So you don't look at the cost of the refund. You look at the joy in Denise's voice when she said, oh, that's nice that you're giving me a full replacement. So that's just a perfect example of how things are getting better.
She, at the end of it, said, thank you. And would you mind, giving, give me 5 stars? But she said, and I thought this was interesting, thank you for your patience and for being so kind to me during this conversation, which always leads me to how nasty do people get? Don't do that. You're not going to get anywhere doing that to people.
Well, that's That's exactly right. One of the things I say about marketing, Denise, is it's a love affair with the customer. You've got to love your customer, but you want them to love you too. And the more that you can elevate that, the better. And management consultants hate it when I introduce the word love into those conversations, but that's what it is. Loving your customer and having them love you.
I'm not going to argue with you. I agree with you. And finally, we're running out of time. You suggest that entrepreneurs who prioritize customer service, customer experience will lead the way forward. And we're not just talking about Amazon. How do you see this benefiting small and medium-sized businesses in particular? Because listen, in America in particular, we are entrepreneurial people, whatever you want to call us. We're always thinking, we're always creating, we're always doing something. So we're creating small businesses. So how do we make sure that that customer service, that customer experience is going to keep us going in the right way?
So it's a principle that applies to all businesses, whether big or small or medium, and that is start with the customer, put the customer first. I always say the end user is the beginning. Do you have enough knowledge, understanding, and intimacy with that customer? How can you do that? Do you have to go and see them and talk to them? Well, that would be a good thing to do. Can you do it through technology, by this direct connection of e-commerce that we've been talking about? Can you do it through research? But ask yourself, do I know that customer as well as I possibly can? And the ideal is to have an insight, an understanding of their motivation, their special needs, not just that you've got cats, but what kind of cats and what does she like to feed her cats? Some kind of deep insight that you can then demonstrate. I listened, I understand you, and here's what I offer you. You can do that if you're a plumber. You can do that if you're an electrician. You can do that if you're a retailer. But start with the customer and start with the feelings, the emotions, the experience, and just get better and better at that through exploring. Let me try this. Let me do that. Let me make this offer. And so every business can grow that way because there's always more customers. There's always the customers that can be better satisfied. There's always the opportunity to improve, to create new products, to innovate. Everybody can do that. And then in a supplementary way, we're now having the technology that helps us do that. So, whether it's Google AdWords or any kind of analytics of web activity, whether it's AI that's going to help us in the future through analytics, we get more and more technology to understand our customers better and better and serve them better and better. And that's got nothing to do with scale. It's about a principle, a mindset. And so that's going to be our future.
A whole heck of a lot of sense to me. Hunter, thank you for joining us today. But before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience about the future of customer? I keep wanting to say consumer, customer capitalism and its importance. And where can our listeners find you and your work online and your book?
Well, the entrepreneur mode, as I call it, is going to become more and more dominant. So think like an entrepreneur. Think of the customer first. Think creatively on how to please them, raise living standards and the level of thriving that way. That's the excitement of customer capitalism. And through this new technology, this direct connection, it's just going to get better and better. So that's the hope. And we talk about that on thevaluecreators.com. That's our website for learning that mindset. We actually have an online course called The Value Creators. So value creation is this process that we've been talking about for the last few minutes, Denise. You can also find me at hunterhastings.com. And the book is called Aberrant Capitalism, Aberrant Capitalism, and you can find it on Amazon.
Yes. So listen to our audience in Aberrant Capitalism, and I don't know how to say this, aberrant or aberrant, but I'm going to go with the way you say it. Aberrant Capitalism, the Decay and Revival of Customer Capitalism. My guest, Hunter Hastings, explores the critical issues facing modern capitalism and its departure from customer-focused principles. He argues that many of the criticisms directed at capitalism stem not from the system itself, but from the way corporations have evolved we talked about this, prioritizing shareholder value over customer needs. And this shift has led to a tarnished reputation for capitalism, characterized mostly by inequality and disillusionment among younger generations, which is just heartbreaking. Hunter also proposes a return to customer capitalism, advocating for a new model he calls entrepreneurial management that integrates entrepreneurship with effective management practices to restore focus on customer value. And this book is an essential reading for anyone interested in understanding the future of capitalism and how it can better serve society. So pick up your copy today to gain valuable insights into how we can revive capitalism for the benefit of all stakeholders. Hunter, thank you for joining me today and thank you for sending me the book. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Denise. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you next week.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffiths at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.